What's your process 6 months before production, 3 months, 2 months, a week?
It varies. The process of 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, etc. It varies, but I would say here's pre-production, right? For a producer, that's like the first big milestone, starting pre-production, because you're working way before. You're the only one, but you're working before pre-production, because the official pre-production starting, you have a team involved, so there's a lot more money involved for pre-production. But before that, you are focusing on possible issues before you bring other people on. And those possible issues first, of course, starts with a script. It starts with where the money's coming from, what their expectations are, what they like and don't like, how they want to be communicated to. It's establishing what your identity is as a project, what kind of people we're going to bring that together. Just kind of game planning on where you're about to go is going to be putting pieces together, but you can't put pieces together yet until you know the box that you're going to be putting them in. So kind of establishing that box, if that's a way to put it, that's what's happening 6 months out. You're establishing a box. And that might take a year instead of 6 months, but you have to do it way before you're actually doing the work, way before you're bringing people in that you're going to lead and ask to do a job. You need to have a box for them to fit into. And it's hard to do it because as producers, we're not the people that actually are going to do it. So it's hard to say, this is the box, now do your thing in that box, unless you have a true vision of where you're going. So first things first, 6 months out, you should already have a vision. But if you don't, establish it hardcore, because if you're going to hire a director specifically, some projects, you know, the director's already on, but if you're going to hire someone to then lead the way in this beautiful creative, he needs to know where you're going, because then he can say, got it. Here's my creative. I'm going to fit it into that, and we're going to go in the same direction. Because producers and directors, oh my goodness, they can, or they can do this. And when they do this, beautiful things happen. And usually what I see, I take the onus of that. The producer has to establish a culture, a direction, how we're going to do this. It has to. And it's not saying this is the way it's going to go. It's saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I see. And seeing if that person can bond with that and then be themselves within those confines. Because as producers, we're the only people that has a power over that person. And we got to be really mindful of that power. You shouldn't be concerned, like putting your power in there because you don't like what they're doing. You know, it's like, oh, well, their creative just doesn't make sense to me today. Doesn't matter. That's their creative. You hired them. That's your fault. So understanding, though, before you start having them work as the leader of that set, you need to make sure they know what you expect, where you're at, what the stakes are. Even like directors, they come in, they're not supposed to think about money. They first have to feel free to create and feel free to go grab 12 wigs for this one actor. No, you know, or whatever it is. Like, we need a prosthetic. Do you? You know, but understanding the stakes, the limits, the boundaries, and then telling them, run wild in that space. But, you know, kind of working on that relationship too. And the reason I say that, a lot of people think of that as counterproductive, but it's so productive because that relationship is going to determine everything else. That's like the two people that make the film happen. And of course there's money and all these things, but the producer and the director, if their relationship can work, it's boundless what the film can do. Because now we have an actual culture, we have an actual direction, we have an actual thing, and those things don't have to war. They do war in some ways because you're constantly like, oh, we don't have enough money for that, or whatever it is. So you have to tell them no about some things. But then if you're already established kind of a way to move, that can work so much better. And then 3 months out, it's pretty much the same thing, but you're kind of like now team building a little bit. You might already have like your cinematographer on. It might be a director that always works with a particular cinematographer, and that's great. But just make sure you connected with that cinematographer as well, because the director and cinematographer are the first people to argue. The first. So if they're buddies and they're the guys that like, man, I love their bond, you need to be in that bond. You need to take them out to dinner. You need to go hang out with the cinematographer without the director, take him to lunch by himself, separate them for 2 seconds, and then bring them back together. The reason being, again, you're game planning. 6 months from then, 3 months from then, they might have a little spat. And now here you are, you've connected with this wonderful director, you know him, and you don't know a thing about that cinematographer. How can you solve the conflict and you know nothing about this person? So this woman that comes in to film your project and direct the camera, this beautiful cinematographer comes in, and her director is rubbing her the wrong way. Does she come to you? Is she able to talk to you about it, or does it just poison your set? Because you didn't even think, oh, I need to reach out to her too. Because I see that another mistake producers make. They don't establish relationships with all the heads of departments. They're kind of just like, with the director, and then it's like, oh, yep, yep, yep. No, like get in there, like have some moments with each of them. Know something about them. You don't have to like take them to lunch, all of them separately, but do enough. And the cinematographer, I think, would be, if you're going to focus in with someone else, focusing with them, because a lot of times with these cinematographers, they're very technical. I grew up around a very technical brother. They're not necessarily going to tell you how they feel unless they feel safe. It's certain people that like, safe or not, they're gonna like, listen here, this is not okay. But cinematographers usually have a certain, I mean, they're not all the same, but usually they have a certain attraction to technical things. So that's a lot of things, the way that brain works is normally not like blah, 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 blah. So I think it's really important to connect with the heads of the department, but especially the cinematographer. And even if it's not for anything else, you're like, this is a waste of time, I have so much to do. Connect with them, because later down the line, you're really solving a problem that you're going to be able to navigate well, and with actual knowledge that you can thwart it and get rid of it and bring those guys back together. And I say guys because I just say guys for guys, girls, whatever. Bring them back together in a way that is good for everyone. Because it's almost like when cinematographers and directors have a moment, it's like, mommy and daddy are arguing, like, for the cast and crew, like, this is uncomfortable. So you got all these people under these two people, and they're all taking direction. So cinematographer is talking to these gaffers and these grips and whatever. The director's talking to the actors and this and the UPM and the AD. Like, all this stuff is happening from their hands. Make sure you know these people are with you. You're with them. You've already learned a little bit about them. You've hung out with them a bit. So when something happens, if something's happening down here on the lower levels, above the line or below the line, all right, I know how to handle this with my heads, because you can't lead everybody, but you can lead leaders. So make sure you're hiring people that are leaders in your head positions, not just the person that's best. The key makeup artist or the key hair, she might not be the best makeup or hair, but she can lead a team. She can communicate to the AD. She knows how to verbalize her issues and hear something and not be offended, but also just make a quick change, not be destroyed under pressure. But the girl or the guy that is like the one that's working on the main actor, they're the best in the room, but they can't work with anybody. They can't lead anybody. So they have their little tasks, but connect with that key, connect with that person. And when hiring them, make sure that you know that person can handle the pressure of their job, not just the work itself, the pressure of it. So I think that's another thing when you're hiring that crew. Ask questions that are beyond just technical or straight to their particular little world. Ask them about them. And you'll be surprised. People will talk about themselves and you're like, oh, I don't think this is gonna work. Oh. Or, hey, you know what? I'm gonna bring you on as a makeup artist. I'm actually having someone else gonna be the key, but I want you to soar and do a great job at whatever you're gonna do. So yeah, I think it's really making sure you're establishing culture, establishing that box, but really digging into your heads. Like, your department heads really need to be established, not only and they are clear on the vision, they're clear on the task at hand, and they feel motivated and all those things, they understand the project, but also that they understand they're about to lead a team, and this is the way I lead. I let them know. I don't want any egos on my set. I don't want any, let me tell you about yourself type stuff. Like, no, this is the way I lead, this is the way I'm gonna treat you. This is my expectation for you going forward. Somebody messes up, have some grace with them, communicate that to them. If you need assistance and you need backup, use me as the bad guy. You don't have to be it. I tell them that all the time. Let me be the bad guy. You can even say, so Rachel's putting the pressure on me. Like, it's fine. I'm fine being that person in that way, the bad guy in that way. But it's like so often where we're only thinking in pre-production or going into pre-production, we're thinking of, I got this in my schedule, I got my checklist. There's so many checklists online now that you can be like, oh, check, check, check. Add to that checklist. People skills, check. I understand my heads of department, check. I understand their motivations, check. Add those things, because those are the things that something can fall through and just not go well. It's not just because you didn't have enough funding. It's not just because your lead actor was in an accident that happened to a friend of mine just recently. It's those moments where the team something happens, and now they're not able to create the best, or they're just not able to work together at all. So.
I think we had a YouTube comment from someone that said, like, and make sure that it's not just a team of people that all know each other and then you're the new person. Mm-hmm. Because if somebody turns and there's like cancer, and then somehow then now you're the odd person out. You know what I'm saying? I
said, that's so true. Familiarity is not the goal. It's, do you fit into the culture of the set? So when you hire people, like, especially hiring directors, like, well, these are my guys. You need to meet those guys before you say yes. Meet them. And then I would say integrate. Because if these particular people are working together and they have a certain way of doing things, and that's great, but they've maybe worked on a commercial or a short. They haven't been on, now if this is a group of people that did 5 features together, what do you need me for? What's your goals? Let me see if I actually work with this. Like, is this who I want on my set? Is this who I want to present to this executive producer or whatever? But when you see that, a lot of times it's because they worked shallow enough to where they stayed in a sound, peaceful place for just long enough to do this movie you're about to hire them for. And when they get to the stress of this feature, it's going to dissipate. And I was the AD on a project that happened on. I was AD, and usually ADs are kind of like the odd man out, because you got to be like the yelling director, right? So you're not part of the crew that work together. You're just there, do your job. And these guys, you would have thought they were like brothers when they were hired. Guys and girls, it's just guys, brothers, sisters. And by, I would say, week 3 of the production, the extreme of the emotion in that room because something went wrong was only because they knew each other like brothers. And there was no one else there to balance it out. So it fell apart. The project I don't even think was finished. I had to leave. I had to go to another project. But it was because they're coming into things, and it's not to say you can't do it. It's just they're coming in with so much history without ever maybe dealing with, you got to find out what's the level of intimacy, not familiarity. Great. They have fun together. They have beers together. They go to skate parks together. I don't know. But what's the intimacy level of this group? Have they offended each other before? And I can ask them that when hiring them. Like, so have you ever gotten in an argument with each other before? Or did you ever disagree with the director you're talking to? Have you ever disagreed with that person or whatever? Yeah, he did such and such. Ask them, probe. If they're like, no, we're great. We never argue. Come on. These guys are working together on a film. Something's going to come up that they disagree with. And I need to know you can handle that. And if you haven't handled it yet, no worries. I need to know, though, how you guys handle conflict before I say yes to them being on the set. So I think a lot of times people like, oh, great, that hire was super easy. I got this one guy, I got all these other guys, and now I'm done. Hold up, time out. There might be something here that you're going to have to dig into to make sure you're going to take all of them. And if it's like all or nothing, that's fine too, because I like groups that are like, yeah, it's all of us or nothing. Fine, but just find out who's the weakest link, who's the negative one, who's the pessimist, who's the realist, who's the optimist, and you see if those things work together. So it's like the optimist is the guy that's like the leader of the group. You're going to do a lot better. But the guy that's the leader of the group is the pessimist, and the realist is, just kind of in the middle, and the optimist is getting on that pessimist nerves, and the realist is trying to balance them out, and then it's going to explode. And you're going to have to fix it as a producer. How can you fix that? With people that know each other and they don't know you. It's hard. So it's not overcomable. It's not insurmountable. It is overcomable, but you need to be aware of it and make sure that you're really not, like I said, taking it like, oh yes, this was easy hire. Really dig in. And I think it's another level of hiring when you hire people that know each other so well.